Hey guys, and welcome back to the Fantasy Football Profits. Today we're going to be going over our Tier 1 wide receiver rankings. Now, if you've ever been on our channel before, you know this video is going to be a little bit different. Typically, we will do a lot more players, but we wanted to change it up and change the pace a little bit. Hopefully, what will happen now is we'll do one tier at a time. That'll mean shorter videos, but videos will be posted more frequently. So we're going to try this style out, guys, and seriously, we hope that it works out. Let us know if you appreciate it or not. But this is going to be a great video. We're really excited. As always, there are timestamps in the description down below, so you can hop around to any player, any information that you want, and I guess just hear about only the information that you really care about. So I think that's really nice, but before that, we've always got some information to talk about. First thing being, I'm getting a lot of questions lately about are we going to be doing our community league or our subscriber league, whatever you want to call it, this season. Yes, we're going to be doing that. Last year, I believe we had two 16-team leagues. Is that correct, Rob?
Yes. Yep.
We're going to be doing that again. Hopefully, we can even get more. Maybe we can run into 3 leagues. However that may be, we're going to be posting a video about that in the next couple of days, and what will happen is there'll be a lot more information in the video, but essentially you just leave a comment with your information, and boom, we'll add you into the league. It'll be pretty sweet, short, simple. It's not going to be very difficult at all, but look for that video because that's where all the information is going to be. The other thing being, if you guys love our research and you want more of it, make sure to check us out on Instagram. Make sure to check out our website where we'll be posting our rankings and all of our information. That's great because if it's been a month since we've posted about our wide receivers because we've finished our videos on them, you can still see updated information as guys are getting injured or traded or whatever it may be. And then as well as if you guys want to go deeper, you want even more information, you want even more in-depth stats, you can make sure to go to our Patreon and sign up for that for our premium stats. That's going to be updated every week throughout the season. I think that's really going to help give a lot of you guys that extra edge in your fantasy league. But let's move on. Let's get into it. I think we just got to start. I'm hyped.
All right, let's get going. So we are talking about our tier 1 wide receivers. Now that for us, that's 9 guys, right? And none of these guys you can go wrong with. They're all great guys. These guys are locks. They're solid. So now normally our tier 1 will be maybe 5 or 6 guys, but we felt compelled to go 9 deep, and we'll get into that. But you can't go wrong with any. And the first guy that we have in there, the number 1 guy in our rankings, is Deandre Hopkins there. This guy's a stud. Now last year going into the season, we had him ranked as our number 2 wide receiver. The guy did not disappoint at all. He went out, he had 115 catches, 1,572 yards, and 11 touchdowns. It's not a fluke, obviously. This guy is showing time and time again he's very good. In 2015, guy had a very similar year, 111 catches, 1,521 yards, and 13 TDs. This guy's averaged 106 catches the last 4 seasons. This guy's off the charts when he has a good quarterback. In fact, in a lot of ways, he's been hindered by bad quarterback play. His numbers would be even better. If you consider some of the guys that's been throwing in the ball before he had Deshaun Watson, here's some of the quarterbacks that he had during that stretch. He had Matt Schaub, Case Keenum, Ryan Mallett, Brian Hoyer, TJ Yates, Brandon Weeden, Brock Osweiler, Tom Savage. Any thoughts on those guys when I mentioned
That's pretty brutal. I don't know. I mean, you talk about quarterbacks. You look at almost all these wide receivers on this list have good quarterbacks. So for him to do that without good quarterbacks shows just how talented he is. That's for sure.
Yeah, it makes it even more impressive there. So this guy's got a lot of talent. He's very athletic. This guy makes insanely athletic catches contested in traffic all the time. He's got great hands. He's got no glaring character issues that we're aware of. He's got hard work ethic. There's a lot to like about this guy there. 3 times in the last 4 years has double-digit touchdowns. This guy finds pay dirt all the time. There's no deficiencies in his game at all. He's only missed 1 game in 6 seasons. And he's ranked last year by Pro Football Focus as number 1 wide receiver out there. You brought this stat up. I thought it was very interesting. Looked at how many targets he had last year. 32% of Houston's targets went to him. That was number 1 in the NFL. That number might drop a little bit this year if Kiki QT is healthy and Will Fuller's healthy, but I still expect that to be at least over 25%, certainly pushing around 30% there. He's going to continue to see a lot of double teams, but I did mention Kiki QT, and I also mentioned Will Fuller. When those guys are healthy, they've shown that they can be successful. I think that'll lessen some of the pressure for him. With that said, he's still going to see the double teams because it's clearly he's a great wide receiver. Last year, he had a career best catch percentage. So this guy's continuing to get better. 7 times last season, he had over 100 receiving yards in a game. And at age 27, he's still young. He's got a lot of good years ahead of them. And what I like about the fact that this guy's only young, but he's paired up with a young, stud, dynamic quarterback also. And they're going to build chemistry together. They've already got chemistry, but that will improve. And his numbers could actually go up there. You look at Deshaun Watson, the quarterback that's throwing the ball. He's young, and I think they're going to continue to be a dangerous combo for years. Now, I want to go to the quarterback for just a second, tie that back into the wide receiver. Last year he started a little slow. Watson did recover from ACL surgery. Came off of that injury, right? But if you look at his last 9 games, Watson was crazy impressive. Last 9 games, he had 16 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions. During that same stretch, he had the best quarterback rating in the NFL. Now, that chemistry already was indicated. We saw it in 2017 when Watson was a rookie there. They had a 5-game stretch where Hopkins had he had 6 touchdowns of 5 games. He was averaging 96 yards per game and 6.2 catches per game. That projects out to be 100 catches, 19 touchdowns, 1,536 yards, and that was when he was a rookie quarterback. They're a great connection together. Last year, the completion percentage between the two of them was 73. They are a deadly combination. Deandre Hopkins, for me, is the clear #1 guy out there. Anything you disagree or want to add to that?
No, I guess the only thing I want to add to that is you said he's on pace for 19 touchdowns over that stretch. Are you going to guarantee that this season?
No, I'm not going to guarantee that, but you know what? 14-15 is very safe for this guy. Sky's the limit.
Yeah, absolutely love this guy. I mean, the only guy who could possibly go over him, which I put him #1, is the next guy on the list. But there's so much talent in this tier 1. You can't go wrong.
All right, let's get to that next guy.
All right, so here we got Michael Thomas. And one of the things I absolutely loved about what you said about Deshaun Watson was his quarterback, right? A great wide receiver paired with a great quarterback makes an elite fantasy wide receiver. And this is another situation. This right here might be the best quarterback receiver combo in the NFL is Drew Brees to Michael Thomas. Guys, Drew Brees is a Hall of Fame quarterback. He has absolutely dominated and proven himself to be a Hall of Famer, to be elite. This guy hasn't struggled at all. It's been absolutely insane. And Michael Thomas, since he's been in the NFL, has also been insane. He's been his #1 target. He's been crazy. And in fact, what impressed me most is Michael Thomas comes in as a rookie, has this phenomenal rookie season. I mean, absolutely electrified. I knew he was going to be good, but I didn't know he was going to be that good. He was so good, in fact, that the Saints simply let Brandon Cooks go. Brandon Cooks was a 1,000-yard receiver for them. Brandon Cooks was producing. And they just let him walk away because they knew they had their guy. That alone speaks for how good Michael Thomas is. But you look at last year, he had 141 receptions. He had about 1,600 yards and 10 touchdowns. That's insane. Not to mention, he had 10 games where he generated a passer rating of over 115 for Drew Brees. So that's very good. And he averaged a 124.5 passer rating generated. That is better than every other tier 1 wide receiver. That is the best of every player we're going to talk about in this video today. Those numbers are insane and through the roof. Those are efficient numbers, means no matter how often you get those throws, how often you get those targets, you're going to be able to trust that. But the numbers continue. His 85%, 6% catch rate among all qualifying wide receivers was #1. It was #1 by 8%. 8% better than the next guy up among qualifying wide receivers. That's insane. But you know what? As much as we talk about how much Drew Brees helps him, it's not just Drew Brees. This guy would be a great fantasy wide receiver no matter where he goes. His 4 yards after the catch and 17 avoided tackles last season were both 3rd among qualifying wide receivers. That shows just how purely athletic he is and how talented he is. It says, hey, thanks for the ball, Drew. I'm going to do a lot more after that, right? I'm not just going to fall down or get tackled here. I'm going to keep going. He's able to make plays, get extra yards, find the end zone. It's phenomenal. But the numbers continue. He got 30% of his team targets, was 2nd best in the NFL last year, just behind DeAndre Hopkins. And his 2.66 yards per route ran was 2nd in the NFL behind only Julio Jones. He is elite. He is top 5 in seemingly every single statistic. I love Michael Thomas at this spot. And with a quarterback like Brees, there's no concerns.
Yeah, from us, we from the outside looking in, we look at metrics, stats, we glean information, reports. We try to do the best that we can to understand the player and his talent, his level, what's going on. But if we're being honest, it's true of any fantasy site out there. We don't get a chance to look behind the curtain a little bit. So we're always kind of looking for indicators of maybe things that we don't see. One of the things that I love is they just signed him to a long-term deal. So that tells me it's not just what we see, but the team loves this guy. They're committed to the future. They felt the need to invest a lot of money in him. So we got the numbers, we got the stats, we got the vote of confidence from the team. Michael Thomas, a great pick there.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, Michael Thomas, probably not going to watch this, but hey, congratulations, dude. First wide receiver to sign a contract of $100 million. That's absolutely ridiculous. I don't care how talented he is. You got to be anxious signing a guy for that much money, but the Saints clearly had a lot of faith in him, and I love that you added that in there. It's not just us, it's the professionals who are paid so much money that clearly trust him as much as we do.
So number 3, guys, Davante Adams. Last year, was the first year he becomes the #1 guy with the departure of Jordy Nelson. He did not disappoint at all. Now, leading up to that, he showed some promise. He got a lot of touchdowns, but would it all come together? Would he break 1,000 yards? It did. He had 111 catches, 1,386 yards, and 13 TDs. And for me, if we look at the 9 guys that we have in Tier 1, he probably has, in my estimation, one of the safest floors among the 9 wide receivers, simply due to the fact that he's playing with one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the NFL. I'm not a Packers fan, I'm a Vikings fan, so I think I can say this, my bias doesn't get in the way, but when I look at the numbers, Aaron Rodgers is phenomenal. He's got a career quarterback rating of 103, that's best in the history of the NFL. He averages 2.13 touchdown passes per game. If you project that out, that's 34 touchdown passes a season for Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers is reliable as they come as far as quarterbacks go. Adams' numbers are not a fluke. He's had 3 consecutive years where he's had double-digit touchdowns, and every year that he's been in the league, he's improved his yards per game, his catches per game, and his targets per game. Last year, the quarterback rating when throwing to him was 121, very high. But the year before, it was just as good at 120. He's proven to be very trustworthy. I also like the fact they have a new offensive coordinator. I think that could open up the offense and create even more opportunities for him in that offense there. If you want to know how good he can be, how safe his floor is, and how high his ceiling is, take a look at Jordy Nelson when he was the #1 wide receiver from 2011 to 2016. And that'll just give you some indication of just how high his floor is and how high his ceiling is. Once again, I love Davante Adams here. I think this guy stepped into elite status last year, and he's going to stay there for many years. Any thoughts on him?
No, I completely agree. I think this is great. Last year, a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, Aaron Rodgers had a down season. But his down season was a 25-2 touchdown to interception ratio, which isn't bad. Top that on, I really expect him to bounce back to even more touchdowns. That's insane, and I just love Davante Adams as one of those guys where there's just no concerns there, and you got to love the safety of that choice.
Yeah, I love also Aaron Jones coming back. Aaron Jones, when he played last year, looked really, really good. And I think that's one of the things right now. I mean, if your team lining up, he's going to see a lot of double coverage. Safety is going to slide over. But if they can have an effective running game with Aaron Jones coming back, I think that will help a little bit there. So, all right, let's get to your guy.
All right, I got to tell you right now, well, we go through these rankings, and it's, do you want to talk about the odds or the evens? You asked me that. I picked the evens because Juju Smith-Schuster was the guy I wanted to talk about. I didn't care about any of the other players because the guy just was like, I don't care who I talk about. If I get to talk about Juju, that's what I want. So right now, I just love this guy. He comes out his rookie season. He plays just 13 games and he was on pace for 1,000 yards. He had over 900 yards in just 13 games as a rookie. I mean, that right there showed us, man, we were excited about this guy. And from that moment on, from the second he stepped onto the field, this guy has been an insane wide receiver.
Now, for you stat geeks out there, I want to add this because Christian said 13 games. If you look at his numbers, it says 14. But here's why he said 13. In reality, he got injured very, very early in the first quarter. So he was really only on the field for 13 games. But somebody, what they're going to push back and say, well, technically. But yeah, 13 games is when he was actually out there. So
yeah, absolutely. And that's one of those numbers behind the numbers thing that people just don't always have time to look at. But absolutely. And of course, last season, he really steps up. I mean, insane. He goes off. He has 161 targets, 111 receptions, 1,427 yards, and 7 touchdowns. He was electrifying. This is a bit of a bold statement, but I think he actually outplayed Antonio Brown in a lot of ways last season. And I think that was the biggest reason Antonio Brown had issues with the team. I mean, as a guy who was for maybe 6 or 7 years straight the best player in that offense and the best wide receiver, he was insane. He was electrifying. And then another wide receiver comes along and challenges him. I think Antonio Brown kind of wanted out because he wants to be the guy. Look at where he went. He went to the Raiders that just didn't have a single wide receiver there. But the numbers continue, right? I mean, this guy was absolutely phenomenal. He was insane last year, and a lot of touchdowns, a lot of targets. So much stats are freed up by Antonio Brown leaving. Antonio Brown had 15 touchdowns last season. You know how much room that is for Juju Smith-Schuster to grow and to have more targets and more yards and more touchdowns? So much room. So I want to address the only question here because I know for a fact the only concern that anyone could even potentially argue is how is he going to do now that he's the #1 wide receiver facing extra attention. For starters, one of the things I love most about him is that he is just one of 3 wide receivers in the NFL, the other guys being Tyreek Hill and Adam Thielen, who managed to finish top 10 in deep receiving touchdowns and slot receiving touchdowns. That right there makes him one of the top 3 most versatile wide receivers in the NFL. And if he's going to switch to the #1 position as the sole wide receiver in that offense, the sole star wideout, He's going to need to be versatile. They're going to need to be able to use him in different packages, in different schemes, situations. They're going to need to be able to put him all over the field. One of the best ways they're going to relieve pressure for this guy is to put him in the slot, to put him out wide, to put him in the left, to put him into trips. He is one of the most versatile wide receivers, and I trust his ability to keep up with all of those changes that the Steelers are going to need to make to get him open. Furthermore, people don't realize how productive he was. Juju Smith-Schuster has played 3 games. His last 3 games that he played without Antonio Brown, they came at the end of the 2018 season in weeks 15, 16, and 17. And here's how it went for him. I don't know if I dare say this, but it went pretty darn good. In week 15, he went 6 for 6, so 6 targets, 6 catches, 114 yards. In week 16, he went 6 for 7, 75 yards and a touchdown. In week 17, he had 10 targets, 9 catches, 143 yards and a touchdown. Those numbers are absolutely insane. And that was, his rookie year? That was 2 years ago, and yet he's had even more time to mature and even more time to get even better. He didn't concern me at all. He played so well without Antonio Brown. Granted, I don't think he's going to quite average that, and I think some teams are going to key on him, and it's going to be a slight issue. But any issue that he faces with extra, protection on him is going to be made up for in the added targets. I mean, I don't have a concern with that. What do you think about that, Rob?
I love Juju Smith-Schuster. Unfortunately, I traded him away in a keeper league. Kind of regret that now, although I got some good guys in return. Reports coming out of Pittsburgh right now is that offense is looking great. They're not changing anything. I know that Antonio Brown's gone and Bell's gone. They're keeping it no huddle, fast paced. I think the offense is what we call high octane. Look at Pittsburgh. They finished top 5 in scoring, I think, the past 2 years. Anyways, I love Juju Smith-Schuster. I think he's in a great situation. I think he's a number 1 guy. I think he's tier 1 and will be for many. In fact, many years. He came into the NFL really young at age 21. And so I think he's 23 right now or something like that.
I believe so, yeah.
Very young guy with huge upside. So. Julio Jones. So I got Julio Jones, and I started thinking about trying to get in some numbers and metrics and this and that and break it all down. But like we all know, Julio Jones is really good. In fact, I think he's been so good that we tend to overlook him. He's not exciting as some of those other picks out there, some of these new guys that have come into the league. But this guy is as good as it gets out there. Since his 3rd season in the NFL, Jones has averaged 100 receiving yards per game. That's what he averages since his 3rd season, 100 receiving yards per game. This guy's phenomenal. Now, the one thing that might hurt him is Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley came out last year, had a good year, might steal some of those targets, but it could actually help his red zone productivity. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. Julio Jones, throughout his career, has really struggled to find the end zone. Only one time in his career he had double-digit touchdowns. And for a guy his size, he should be getting a lot of touchdowns. He really should, and it hasn't been a strength of his. Last year, though, he did have 8 touchdowns in the last 9 games. After being shut out for the first 7 games of the year, finding the end zone. And I think we could probably contribute some of that to Calvin Ridley's success. So I think he might lose a few targets, but I think the touchdowns could go up for him there. Since 2013, he's averaged 6.9 catches per game. You project that out over 16 games, that's averaging 110 catches per season. Another thing I like about him is, I'm not being honest with you, going back about 3-4 years ago, I wasn't a huge fan of Matt Ryan. I thought he was a quality quarterback, good quarterback, not great. But Matt Ryan has really solidified himself as a really good quarterback. 2 of the last 3 years, Matt Ryan has averaged over 30 touchdown passes per season. I think that helps his improvement as a quarterback there. His career, when we talk about guys' quarterback rating when the ball is thrown in them, what's the quarterback rating when they throw the ball to that particular receiver, right? And some of these guys will get to 115, 120 for a season, right? But to stay over 100 in your career is phenomenal. Quarterback rating when the ball's been thrown to Julio Jones in his entire career is 108. This guy has been phenomenal there. He may not be as exciting as other wide receivers we're going to talk about today, but he's as good as reliable as anybody in this in these rankings that we're going to talk about. Anything you want to add to that? Any thoughts?
No, exactly. This is where you just have to say, hey, is he the most exciting pick out there? Absolutely not. He's a PPR specialist. Excuse me, guy gets loads of yards. And the thing that I didn't mention, or that you didn't mention, was earlier when I talked about Michael Thomas's 2.66 yards per route ran, that was second in the NFL. Number 1 was Julio Jones at 2. I think it was 9.2. Of course, I didn't have this player, so I don't remember it exactly. It's 2.9 something, and that's why I love. And just on average, when he runs a route, he's getting more yards than anybody else out there. I just love that.
All right.
All right, so here we've got Mike Evans. This guy's been great since he's been in the NFL. He was a first-round, 7th overall pick, and man, that was a great selection by the Bucs. I'll tell you what, right now, I'm not too excited with some of the general managing, the draft picks, some of the decisions made by the Bucs, but you can't knock him on that pick. At 6'5", 231 pounds, this guy's big. He's one of the biggest wide receivers that we're going to talk about in this tier 1. He's one of the biggest receivers in the NFL, next to Julio Jones, who you just talked about. That size really helps, but he's not slow either. He ran a 4.5 40-yard dash, making him a big wide receiver with speed. He is a matchup nightmare for defenses, and he's absolutely capitalized on that. He's one of just a few wide receivers in the NFL. I can only think of one other guy on the top of my head, the other guy being Michael Thomas, who has had over 1,000 yards every year that they've been in the NFL. Last year, he didn't just have over 1,000 yards, he had over 1,500 yards, and he had an absolutely monstrous, I don't know how he did this. I tell you right now, I have never seen a wide receiver go over 1,000 yards and average 17.7 yards per catch. Every time he got a catch, he was averaging almost 18 yards a catch. That's absolutely insane. Other guys on this list are on average being targeted less than 10 yards down the field. I don't know how he did it. He's also consistent. 8 different games last season, he had over 100 yards receiving. Guys, almost every fantasy league that you're in, you're getting a bonus for when your wide receiver goes over 100 yards. Half of all the games Mike Evans played in last season, he got you a bonus if you owned him in fantasy leagues. That right there is huge. The one concern being he is inconsistent to find the end zone. His rookie year, he had 12 touchdowns. Second year, he had 3, and then 12, and then 5, and then 8. This guy's all over the place, and that is concerning, but there is an absolute bright spot. In fact, it's surprising he had 8 touchdowns last year considering he was constantly switching between quarterbacks in such an unstable offense that had a poor running game. I don't know how he managed it, but things are looking up. This year, the offensive coordinator, I believe the head coach for the Bucs, is Bruce Arians, and I absolutely love that. Bruce Arians was the coach of the Cardinals back when Carson Palmer threw 35 touchdown passes, and back when David Johnson had 32 touchdowns in his first 32 games. Bruce Arians is one of the probably top 6 offensive-minded coaches in the NFL, and I really think he can turn this offense around. In fact, it was actually still pretty good last year, but I think he can make it even better. Even better, what I like is he came out and said that Jameis Winston is having real consistency in training camp. Guys, anyone who's followed Jameis Winston for any period of time has seen the talent. We've seen some ability. We have seen that he could be an above average, if even a very good quarterback in the NFL. But then all of a sudden he goes out there, he throws picks, he struggles in games where he throws 3 interceptions, he's fumbling the ball, he's making bad plays. Consistency's been the concern. Talent has not been the problem. And so when your coach comes out who has played with a lot of other good coaches and who's had some phenomenal seasons and says, hey, this guy's consistency is starting to get there, that's huge. I think that's going to go a long way for Mike Evans this season.
Yeah, one of the things I like about Mike Evans, or really that offense as a whole, I actually like Winston as a sleeper quarterback this year. That defense, Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense, the last few years has been near the bottom of the NFL. They've been terribly bad. Now, granted, they're going to make some moves. They're going to improve that defense. But even if they improve, they're still going to be the bottom third in the NFL. And that means that offense has to score a lot of points to win games. I think they're a great volume play. That's part of the reason why they put up such great stats. So I love Mike Evans playing on a team that's got a defense that's going to be in the bottom third in the NFL. So I got Tyreek Hill. I'm not here to talk about the man's character. I'm just simply going to talk about his fantasy value. The speedster has had back-to-back years over 1,000 yards receiving. Now, if you look, in fact, he's increased his touchdowns, his catches, and yards in back-to-back years since he entered the league in 2016 as a rookie. Now, in 2017, he had a good year, but last year he became great, finishing with 87 catches, 1,487 yards, and 12 touchdowns. He moved from a good wide receiver to a great wide receiver in fantasy terms there. Now, when he came into the NFL, he was drafted in the 5th round, and by a lot of people, they kind of viewed this guy as a project who had a lot of speed, but he needed some work. He's more than a project. This guy's arrived. He's got insane speed. He's elusive. He has sharp cuts. Now, there's some concern with his size. He's only 5'10", right? So can this guy be a guy long-term that can be a possession receiver, put up good numbers, be consistent? But a couple other guys out there that have had that same height, they've been about 5'10", that same build, Steve Smith, T.Y. Hilton, and another guy you may have heard of is Antonio Brown. You've heard of him? And Antonio Brown, those guys have dominated. But Antonio Brown, for example, hasn't just been a speedster that stretches the field. Antonio Brown has led his team in receptions. In the last 6 years, he's had over 100 catches per season, so he's become a great possession receiver there. I like Tyreek Hill, but I don't care how good of a wide receiver you are. You got to have a good quarterback throwing you the ball, right? Bottom line. And he's going to have Pat Mahomes for many years to come. So you combine his speed with Pat Mahomes' crazy strong arm. These two are going to be a brutal matchup for corners and safeties all the time. It's just going to be very difficult. Another thing I like about his situation there, okay, you got Travis Kelce, and they got some other good weapons on that team, which means it's really hard to double team him or to slide coverage over or bring a safety over. If you do, they're just going to burn you with Kelce. They're going to burn you with Williams. They also got Sammy there on the team. So I love his situation. Once again, I'm not here to speak to the guy's character, but on the field, he will produce for you. So anything you want to add to Tyreek Hill?
No, absolutely. The fact of the matter is the guy shows talent, and he's in probably one of the best situations in the NFL. He's got to be a tier 1.
All right.
All right, guys, here we have Odell Beckham, and the numbers are there. Guys, Odell Beckham has been electrifying. He's been insane. He's been through the roof, off the charts. I don't even care what you want to say, whatever term you want to throw at him. If it's positive, it's right. Odell Beckham has been insane since he's entered the NFL. His career per game average is 11 targets, 7 receptions, 99 yards, and 0.8 touchdowns per game. His career per season average is 176 targets, 112 receptions, just shy of 1,600 yards, and 12.5 touchdowns. So that's what happens when you take his per game average and put it over a whole season. The number is insane. The number is absolutely dominant, and that alone puts him up here in this tier 1. But it gets much better than that. It gets a whole lot better than that. For starters, you take him from a team he hated and didn't want to be for and put him on a roster. He said he loves the Browns. They're up and coming. He's so excited to play for them. That alone, you put a wide receiver in a situation where he actually wants to be there, he's just going to play harder. He's going to play better. I mean, just the idea of a guy not wanting to be there alone makes you know he's not going to play as well as he can. But it gets even better than that. Let's just talk about the huge upgrade at quarterback position. When we talk about these other quarterbacks, guys like Deshaun Watson, Ben Roethlisberger, Drew Brees, I mean, player after player on this list have had good quarterbacks. Odell Beckham hasn't really had a good quarterback when you really look at it. Eli Manning has been awful. Last year, Eli Manning threw for 21 touchdown passes. That's awful. Not only is 21 touchdown passes below average and not good enough, that had to be shared between Odell Beckham, Evan Ingram, Saquon Barkley, and Sterling Shepard. That is probably the deepest 4 talented targets that you could look at among all the teams in the NFL last season. That's deep. As far as Sterling Shepard probably being the 4th best option, that's an insane amount of talent. And you know how much that had to be spread around those only 21 touchdown passes? That alone seriously hurt him. That now he goes to a team that has Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield had 27 touchdowns last year. That's a rookie record, by the way. He did in just 13 games. If you take his stats after they finally upgraded coaches, because they desperately needed to get a new coaching staff in there. Over the last, I believe, 8 games he was on pace for 39 touchdown passes that season. And Odell Beckham comes in as the sole number 1 target. Jarvis Landry is a good number 2 wide receiver, but he's not a number 1, and he was honestly a little bit of a disappointment last season. David Njoku is a tight end sleeper. We've been talking about how athletic he is, how talented he is, and we've been waiting for him to produce, and the production just simply hasn't been there. Maybe it's because he's getting too much attention and they need another piece, whatever it may be. The fact of the matter is, Odell Beckham goes from competing for time, competing for targets and touches, to hands down being the number 1 player in that offense, in an offense that's scoring more with a better quarterback. It's a huge upgrade in the situation. It's nothing against the Giants. This is a great year. I think it's going to be an awesome season for Odell Beckham. I just love this guy going in this season. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, Odell Beckham. A lot of the wide receivers, but talk about a guy that brings a lot of drama. Reports sometimes there's conflicting reports out of New York. Is he a guy that brings drama? Is he worth it? All things aside, this guy is phenomenal. Probably one of the greatest wide receivers in terms of just sheer athletic ability. I was watching today some of the highlights coming out of Browns camp. He's just making these amazing one-handed catches or developing chemistry. I think he's going to have a really good year there. So
Absolutely.
So we're going to get to our final guy. We talk about drama here. Whatever you might think of Antonio Brown, this guy is a future Hall of Famer, and the numbers simply do not lie. Put aside your thoughts and just look at the numbers, because that's all that matters. 6 consecutive seasons with over 100 catches per season, 1,000 yards, and during that same 6 seasons, 4 times he's had double-digit touchdowns. And this guy may bring a lot of drama, but a lot of people that have worked with him have said he's got one of the hardest work ethics in the NFL. This guy is phenomenal about being competitive. He wants to be great. I think you're right. I think part of the problems was I think he hated Juju Smith-Schuster coming on the scene. He likes to be the guy. I don't like that prima donna attitude, but I love his drive to be the number one guy. I think that's why he works so hard. Now, we discussed concerns. Going from, Steelers to the Raiders. Is he still tier 1? You and I kind of discussed that a little bit there. Yeah, I think it's a downgrade going from Big Ben to Derek Carr, but I don't think Derek Carr is as bad as many people realize. I think Derek Carr actually is a quality quarterback. You look at between 2015 and 2016, Derek Carr averaged 30 touchdown passes. Derek Carr was really good down the stretch last year. Weeks 7 through 16, as Carr's getting comfortable with Gruden's offense, during those weeks, he had 12 touchdown passes to 0 interceptions and a quarterback rating of 101. And who were his wide receivers last year for the Raiders? His best wide receiver at that point was the aging Jordy Nelson, who retired right after the year. I think that Gruden's going to get Brown involved. Now, I do think the Steelers system was more prolific than the Raiders. But I also think that the change of scenery could help to some degree. And here's what I mean by that. There's a chance that he could get close to 200 targets this year. And that should offset some of the downside of going from the Steelers to the Raiders. And the reason why is, yeah, he's got some other guys there, but who's that number guy that's going to steal targets from him? He doesn't have Juju Smith-Schuster. He doesn't have Le'Veon Bell. He doesn't have Connor. He's going to get peppered with targets. So yes, worse system, I think more targets. This guy is great. And at age 31, he's got many good years left. I want to give you some ideas of Derek Carr and how Derek Carr really likes to lean on his number one guy. You look at Derek Carr when he's throwing the ball to Jordy Nelson the last 5 games as the team's number one wide receiver. Last 5 games, Jordy Nelson averaged 6.9 targets per game. Shows he's not afraid to lean on his number one wide receiver. You look at Amari Cooper last year. In the first 4 games before getting traded to Dallas. In the first 4 games, Derek Carr had 2 games where he threw him an average of 11 targets per game, and he averaged 122 receiving yards per game. So I think that we look at that Derek Carr is definitely going to look at him throwing the ball a lot. I think he's going to probably average close to double-digit targets per game. I do think his ceiling's a little bit lower now that he's left, but for me, he's still a stud, and he still remains a tier 1 wide receiver. His current average draft position is midway through or late second round, yet he's a guy that has first-round potential. With that said, the final note is that he has missed some practice time due to a foot injury. Nobody really knows. They're kind of quiet about it. It sounds like it's just a blister at this point, but we'll have to monitor that.
Absolutely. Guys, this is same. If you watched our quarterback rankings video, we talked about Pat Mahomes and the possibility of a regression. And I think I'm going to say a very similar thing to what I said about Pat Mahomes with Antonio Brown. I expect some regression, but when Antonio Brown had 15 touchdowns last year, regression isn't a major concern. He can take a step back and still have 12 touchdowns. So, yeah, it's not as great of a situation, but it's still better than most of the wide receivers out there, and he still belongs in tier 1. And this is, believe me, something we debated for probably a half an hour, whether he should be tier 1. But when we really sat down and looked at the numbers, honestly, he belongs there. He really does. Yeah, he's switching teams, and that makes us uncomfortable, but it's not a bad quarterback.
As we conclude the video, I know there's a few out there saying, wait a second, what about Adam Thielen? What about some of these other guys? They're not in tier 1. And you know what? You have to watch our tier 2 video. Tier 2's got a lot of great guys. In fact, tier 2's loaded with wide receivers that if everything falls into place, these guys could have top 5 numbers. So, but watch that video in a couple days. We'll get to our tier 2. We have any questions, thoughts, concerns, we'd love to hear it. Subscribe, like, anything on hit notification, anything I'm missing there?
No, absolutely nothing. But like I just said, guys, make sure to sign up for our Patreon, check out our website, check out our Facebook, our Instagram, whatever. We got a lot of our content for you guys to check out, so just make sure you do that if you haven't. I know a lot of you who are sticking around at the end of the video already have, but just like to make sure that anyone who's new to our channel, make sure that they kind of hear about that and have an opportunity to get the most out of us that we can give you guys.
All right, thanks for joining us. God bless.